The Book of Exodus, from Slavery to Freedom. Introduction. Welcome back to our journey through the Bible. Today we explore the Book of Exodus, a powerful narrative of deliverance, covenant, and the birth of a nation. Exodus is the story of how God rescues his people from bondage in Egypt and leads them towards the promised land, forging a unique relationship with Israel along the way. Let's dive into this epic story of faith, freedom, and divine guidance. Part 1: The oppression in Egypt. The story begins with the descendants of Jacob, now called Israelites, living in Egypt. Over time they grow numerous and prosperous, but a new Pharaoh, who does not remember Joseph, sees them as a threat. Pharaoh enslaves the Israelites, subjecting them to brutal labor, yet in their suffering they cry out to God and he hears their plea. It is in this context of oppression that the stage is set for God's mighty intervention. Part 2: The birth of Moses. A deliverer is born. Amid the darkness a child is born, Moses, who will become the deliverer of Israel to save him from Pharaoh's decree to kill all newborn Hebrew boys. His mother hides him in a basket and sets it afloat on the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter finds Moses and raises him in the Egyptian palace, unaware that this child will one day challenge the very empire that nurtures him. Moses grows up with a strong sense of justice, and when he witnesses an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, he kills the Egyptian and flees to Midian. In Midian, Moses encounters God in the burning bush, where God calls him to return to Egypt and lead his people out of slavery. Moses is reluctant, but God assures him, "I will be with you." Part 3: The plagues of Egypt. God's power revealed. Moses returns to Egypt with a mission from God, confronting Pharaoh with a simple yet profound demand: "Let my people go." But Pharaoh's heart is hardened, and he refuses, leading to a series of 10 devastating plagues that demonstrate God's power over the gods of Egypt. The plagues culminate in the Passover, where the Israelites mark their doorposts with lamb's blood to protect their firstborn from the final plague, death. This act of faith becomes a defining moment in Israel's history. As God passes over their homes, sparing them from judgment, Pharaoh finally relents and the Israelites leave Egypt, but their journey is far from over. Part 4: The crossing of the Red Sea. A miracle of deliverance. As the Israelites journey toward freedom, Pharaoh changes his mind and pursues them with his army trapped between the Red Sea and the approaching Egyptians. The people fear for their lives, but Moses reassures them, saying, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." In a miraculous act, God parts the Red Sea, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry land. When the Egyptians follow the waters, return, swallowing the entire army. This moment of divine intervention is celebrated in song and marks the definitive end of their enslavement. Part 5: The giving of the law. A covenant with God. Now free, the Israelites journey to Mount Sinai, where God establishes a covenant with them. Moses ascends the mountain and receives the 10 Commandments, God's laws that will guide the moral and spiritual life of Israel. But even as Moses communes with God, the people grow impatient and build a golden calf to worship. This act of idolatry nearly destroys them, but Moses intercedes on their behalf and God renews his covenant. The laws given at Sinai cover every aspect of life, setting Israel apart as God's chosen people. The construction of the tabernacle begins, a sacred space where God will dwell among his people. Part 6: The journey to the promised land. Challenges and faith. The journey to the promised land is fraught with challenges. The people often grumble and rebel, longing for the comforts of Egypt, yet God remains faithful, providing manna from heaven and water from the rock. Despite their doubts and disobedience, God leads them by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The construction of the tabernacle is completed and God's presence fills it, symbolizing his constant presence with his people. The journey will continue into the next book, but Exodus leaves us with a powerful message. God is a deliverer, a lawgiver, and a faithful guide. His covenant with Israel marks the beginning of a relationship that will shape the rest of biblical history. The book of Exodus is a testament to God's power and faithfulness. It's a story of liberation of a people transformed from slaves into a nation chosen by God. The journey from Egypt to Sinai teaches us about the importance of obedience, faith, and trust in God's promises. As we reflect on these stories, let us be inspired by the God who hears our cries, delivers us from bondage, and walks with us through every trial. The God of Exodus is still the God of today, faithful and true. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Exodus. Stay with us as we continue exploring the profound truths of the Bible, one book at a time. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more biblical breakdowns, insights, and inspirational journeys.